Hi, and welcome to The Scoop. My guest today wears many hats as she holds both a law and business degree. She's a wife, a mother, a successful businesswoman, a producer, a TV host, and is hands down the reason to tune into television in Kenya. Julie Gichuru, welcome to The Scoop.
Thank
Julie,
you,
it's
Salim.
lovely to have you here.
Thank
Now, all
you.
these...
No, first of all, you're too kind. That intro was like...
No, actually, I couldn't fit everything on the intro, so otherwise that'd be half the show. But you wanted to be an actor. You were big into drama.
A theater actress.
Actor.
Yes.
A proper.
Yes, proper classic. You know. Yeah.
So Shakespeare,
Yes,
stuff like that.
Yes.
And then you wanted to be a criminal lawyer.
Yes. Actually, I wanted to be a criminal lawyer first.
Before the acting.
Yeah.
And what made you change your mind?
Actually, it's very interesting. So for the longest time, I had a passion for criminal law because of what I watched on TV. I watched a lot of those TV shows where the criminal lawyers were there defending the innocent. And so I thought, this is amazing. I'd love to do this. I think I can do this. I was very good at drama, won lots of awards. I should start by saying I had incredible stage fright in primary school. So I loved drama. I wrote poetry. I wrote plays. I studied hard when it came to English literature, history. But I could not stand on I would stand on a stage and it would be a disaster. Then in high school, I started training myself to handle that stage fright. And I really thank my schools, the schools I went to, because they gave me the opportunity to practice and to learn.
That's interesting because there are obviously a lot of young people that have that stage fright that you have. What did you do when you say you train yourself? What did you do to actually get over it?
It's really interesting. I'd go into, for instance, in Musangari, we had a huge school hall, and I was highly intimidated in that hall. So at the end of the day, when it was empty and no one was in there, I would go in there and just stand and just breathe. I mean, literally just doing that and visualizing people in their seats and saying, you've got nothing to be scared of, embrace the fear. Literally, that really helped me. Also, I made a move from Musangari to Imani. And in that transformation, something happened.
These are all high schools here, schools here in Kenya.
These are schools in Kenya. Yeah. So Loreto Convent Musangari was an all-girls convent. And then I went to a mixed boarding school. And in the process of that move, something clicked in my head. And I realized it's...
boys, I assume.
No, it wasn't the boys.
Click, okay.
I had lots of brothers, lots of cousins my age who were boys. So I never really had...
It wasn't a novelty.
It wasn't an issue. Okay. It wasn't an issue. So, and it was nice. It was nice, though, competing side by side with boys and, having come from a girls' school. But what clicked for me was the fact that it's not about you when you're on the stage. It's about the message. And if you're fearful, you can't communicate the message. So when you take the focus away from you, the fear starts to fall away. After Form 4, I sat with a man called James Falkland, who in the theatre world in Kenya, he was a huge force. And he had directed me in several plays. And I sat with him and I said, what I really want to do is study theatre. But I have a passion for law and journalism. He looked at me and said, Julie, if you want to earn a real living, theatre will not be the way to go. If you don't mind having poverty by your side,
neither will journalism.
At that time,
yeah,
but
neither will journalism.
But he didn't say that at that time. But he did advise me, and I went away and I thought about it, and I said, you know what, I'm going to study law. And so I put law first.
So you did do your law degree.
You
went to
I went to University of Wales, Cardiff, and did law there, and learned. There's something called the laws of evidence. So you study criminal law, which is one thing. Then there's the laws of evidence, and I disagreed with every concept and realized I cannot be a criminal lawyer. I actually loved commercial law, maritime law, land law, contract law. So everything I thought I wouldn't love,
you actually enjoyed doing.
I enjoyed. Yeah. And so I decided, I worked for a year to raise money and did my MBA with a focus on world trade law and international business.
And then you came back to Kenya.
And needed a job.
And yes, so you looked for a job now, which is what everybody does. And did you think it'd be pretty easy to get that?
I knew it would be hard.
Really?
People told me 6 months minimum. You will be walking, tarmacking is what they call it. And so I did it. I handed out CVs everywhere, and I really needed money. My parents had divorced Salim. I wasn't very happy about my dad's remarriage, so I wasn't going to live with him. I was living with my grandmother in Dagoretti, and my mom had emigrated to the US. So my family was in tatters. I was living with my grandmother, and I realized, Julie, you need to earn some money. You can't go asking anybody for money now. And so I decided to walk into KTN and do a screen test.
We'll come to the media side in a
Okay.
minute, but going back in terms of even growing up in a mixed family,
Right.
tell me a little bit about your background and your family's background, your mom, your dad,
So my father's family came from Kashmir many years ago when India went through the split. They ended up pushed into Pakistan. And interestingly, my grandfather was a navigator on a ship. And he just decided to put his family on the ship and go wherever they were going. And so at the age of 1 year, my father landed in Kenya. They grew up in between Mombasa and Nairobi. When he was a young man, teenager still, he saw a black woman walking on the other side of the street, and the story goes that he fell absolutely in love. My mother was a daughter of a journalist, one of Kenya's veteran journalists, Lawrence Kibui, my grandfather. And she was the conservative daughter, the good girl among many. And one day decided to tell her father that she's going to marry this man, and her father gets a shock of his life when he sees it's an Asian man. Are you mad? You're getting married, first of all, and you're a teenager.
I mean, that was difficult at
It
that
didn't
time.
happen. It didn't really happen. So he said, either this is terrible stuff, and she said, well, I'll run away or you'll accept it. There's no two ways about it. And my grandfather accepted it. My father did come respectfully. He asked for her hand, and they got married. He joined the Kenya Army and served for many decades in the Kenya Armed Forces. So that's who my parents are.
And what did your mom go to the States to do? How
My
come she
mom
left for the
immigrated
States?
after they divorced, and she went with my younger brothers, and she moves between the U.S. and Kenya now. It's with the starting of
And
the
how
dual
many siblings?
citizenship. I have 3 brothers, so an elder brother and 2 younger brothers.
Oh, so you're the only girl. So you were the spoiled one.
Yes, I'm the only girl.
So you were the
No,
spoiled one,
I was
no?
the one who was told, Julie, do this. Julie, you know, traditional African and Asian families.
Yes, the
Where the
girl
girl
is
does
everything.
everything. So I basically did everything. But I think it taught me the spirit of grace and participation.
And your folks put a lot of emphasis on education. That was important to
Yes,
them to make sure that you and all
So
your
we-
siblings got the best education possible.
We were not particularly well off, but the one thing they spent money on, we didn't have luxuries, you know. For me, a luxury was a book, you know, just getting whether it was new or not, that was like a big deal for me. But what they did was try to send us to the best schools they could. And I will forever be thankful to my parents for that.
And the media influence of your grandfather. So you were always interested in the media? Did he used to tell you stories about his exploits as a journalist?
Yes, my grandfather was the kind of guy over the weekend, all these friends and relatives would come and sit around him and have chats and debates and discussions. He was a wonderful man who empowered his girls and his granddaughters. My dad spanked me a couple of times, but he too, and one day I'll write in my blog those stories of he was encouraging, nurturing. I think I'm the only grandchild, though, that he ever spanked because I was particularly naughty, but he was a huge influence on who I am today as well.
We'll be right back and talking with Julie Gichuru about her journey into media. Stay with us. Hi, welcome back. We're here with Julie Gichuru and we're talking about her journey into media. Julie, KTN was the first place you went and showed your CV. Now, as a lawyer, trained lawyer, just graduated from Cardiff in Wales, what did you go and ask them for? I mean,
Yeah.
a media company, why would they employ you?
So I went in and I said, I think I can do what you guys do. I'm qualified. I knew I was overqualified because I had my MBA and I thought, you know, but I thought, let me try. And they told me to come in for a screen test. And so I did. I did the screen test. I remember asking Njoroge Moara, who was one of the iconic broadcasters of the time. I remember asking him, how did I do on the screen test? And he looked at me straight-faced and he said, maybe a 3 out of 10. And walked away. And my heart just sank.
Little did he know that you were going to replace him.
Oh,
wasn't he? But anyway.
no. I don't believe we ever replace. We just evolve. So anyway, they called me the next day and said, would you start on Monday? That was a Thursday. And when I went in, I was excited. I couldn't believe it. At that time, they weren't even going to give me a salary. They told me, just come in and start. which
And
for me...
start as what? As a news anchor? Is
As
that
an-
what you?
As an I didn't know.
Yeah.
I knew it was an internship. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. So
But
when
you
I went
screen
in...
tested as an anchor?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. When I went in, I asked them, why did you call me back? And they said, it's because you have business and law, and we have a problem with reporting from the courts and business reporting. So yeah, that for me was great. So I started reporting immediately from the courts, and for a long time was based at the courts. Then I moved on to business reporting, and then I started, before I started anchoring actually, there was a hiatus because Capital made me an offer that was a salaried offer.
This is Capital FM, the radio
Capital
station.
FM, the radio station, which is based in Kenya, made me a salaried offer, and I said to KTN, could you pay me a salary? It's not a lot, but this is what I've been offered by Capital. They said, no, you're being a bit too ambitious. People normally wait 6 months. So I had to say goodbye, but I was back a couple of years
So
later.
so you did 2 years of radio?
Yes.
And what was it like being on radio? I mean, you have a face for television.
Oh.
I have a face for radio, on the other hand.
Yeah.
But,
No!
but that's what I've been told by
No.
many people. Is,
Yeah.
that's why I have a side view here on this one, so it's it's a little bit better. How was that kind of going to be this anonymous voice, as opposed to the passion of being on television and people seeing you and being able to relate more? I always found that radio, people, while a lot more people listen to radio, they don't really relate. You have a completely different picture of the
Right.
person that's presenting on
Right.
radio until you meet them, and sometimes you are, unpleasantly shocked when
Oh
you do meet
no,
them.
that's sad. But I understand what you say, because you do create perceptions and visualize what you think the people should look like. But for me, I'm an introvert, funny enough. So I wasn't totally excited necessarily by the idea of being on a screen. That is never what motivated me. I needed a salary. That's why I walked into there. So going into radio, I was petrified, to be honest. And on radio, what happens is you have the earphones and your voice is booming back into your head. And the more I would hear my voice, the more petrified I would get. So I had to do what I did in high school. I had to train myself to face my fear. And it was up until the point where I did a show called Capital Open Line. Capital Open Line was a talk show, and Phil Matthews, who was the program controller, said, yeah, Julie, you can try it. I asked him, could I do this? And he said, try it, let's see. And I walked in there, and my first open line was with the head of the Mungiki at the time, which is obviously, it's an outlawed sect, a violent criminal sect is what it's seen as. And I had the head of Mungiki, who was being chased by the police at the time, apparently. He was in studio with me, and for 2 hours we had a back and forth. I loved it. I forgot the fear. I couldn't believe it when they walked in and said the time was up. And Phil Matthews ran into the studio and he said, this is your thing, Julie. This is your thing. And yeah, that's.
And it says so much about our police that
that he
you
was
were
in
on
studio
air
with
for
me
2 hours,
for 2 hours.
and they still couldn't figure out where you're going. That's fantastic. So then you go back to television. So you go
Yeah.
back to KTN. Looking at news, this is where your love for news and developing stories and current affairs came about, was from the radio side, but then translating that into television.
And it's interesting because what happened for a long time was I went into radio, I understood how to think audio, right? And produce audio, because it is very much about theater of the mind. Then I started thinking pictures, and I wanted the picture. I wanted to put the visuals in. And that's when I realized it's time to go
What
back
is that
into TV.
transition like? Because I've always worked in pictures. The few things I can remember that my father taught me was that words were insignificant, irrelevant. The picture is what is
Speaks a
most
thousand
important.
words, right?
Just what is most important, and people will remember that picture, but they will never remember the caption for it. I don't think he was 100% right on that, but that was the way he thought. And I've always grown up on that. It must be much more difficult to write to television, or is it easier?
I think it's easier to write for audio, a plan produced for audio. And the reason why is that sound evokes a lot of things. So if you work sound right, then you can't get it wrong. The problem with working to TV is you must then combine the visuals with the audio. And sometimes in Africa, for instance, when you're working on, and you've done this, working on a historical documentary, you can't get enough visuals to work with the content that you have on audio, and that so it presents an additional challenge. But when you get the combination right, it's incredible. So I think it's powerful when you have them all working together.
So your journey until you didn't stay with KTN for that long, did you?
It was about 3 years. So I think I joined KTN in 2003. We launched the first investigative TV series in Kenya, Inside Story at KTN. And I worked on that for quite a while. I left KTN in 2005. So it was 2 years after the passing of our third born son. I just decided I cannot be in the same environment. To move forward, I needed to just completely change my environment. It was just a decision that I made to start something afresh.
How did your son pass away?
He was being fed one night, and you know, it was pureed food. He was 6.5, 7 months. He had just started his pureed food, and he was being fed, and he choked. And they did the wrong kind of life-saving procedure. So when they blew in, it actually stuck in his trachea and blocked it. We got him to the hospital on time. Tony and I, my husband and I, were heading home, and they called us and we said, take him straight to the hospital. We'll meet you there. We were in traffic. Got him to the hospital within a few minutes. They got him back, got his heart back, but they had to use very strong drugs to get his heart beating again. And so after 6 to 8 hours, he, really went down and he passed on. Yeah.
How does that? It's not the natural order of things in the world. How does that change your perception of life?
Devastating, Salim. Devastating. There's nothing you can imagine that could even compare. And I would have to struggle to breathe. For weeks, months after that, I was breathing because it wasn't coming. So you bury a child, and it complete, and a lot of what I do and who I am today has been wholly shaped by understanding that life is a gift. It's not something to take for granted. Tomorrow is not promised to any of us. And so my vision is, what can I do right here so I can be with him again? And so it transforms your whole life.
We're going to come right back with Julie Gichuru right after this. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm still here with Julie Gichuru. We're talking about her journey in media. From KTN, where did you move to?
So from KTN, I moved to Nation, which was just rebranding its TV station, Nation TV, to NTV. And I moved with...
And the Nation is one of the biggest media companies in East Africa, if not in the entire continent.
Yes, in East and Central Africa, and yes, as you've said, possibly across the continent. So we moved as a group. So my managing director, Ian Fernandez, had moved. Some of the news team had moved, and Ian called me and said, Julie, we'd love to have you with us. We're rebranding. We're starting something new. For me, I knew this would be a healing process as well, just, going into something different. And so took it on with, 150%. And we rebranded and built NTV.
But then you left NTV as well. I mean, how I'm not saying that you can't stay in one place by any means, but is it because you're looking for new challenges all the time? Is that really is you get bored once you've set something up? Because a lot of people, like I would have a hard time leaving my company because, you've put heart and soul into setting it up,
right,
into building something and then moving on to something else. It must be hard.
It wasn't easy. I tell you, I went through a grieving process when I left NTV, and my brand had grown immensely with the NTV brand. I was one of those people who would run down to editorial and sit and talk to, the writers for the newspaper and pick their brains, and everybody knew me in that building. I was all over the place. I loved interacting with people, so it was a really difficult move. But as you said, for me, Salim, and I always tell people, it's not about sitting down and saying how long have I been somewhere, or loyalty, or all these kinds of notions. It's about how do you grow yourself, and how do you do things that are of most benefit to society. I felt I couldn't grow in the way I wanted to grow if I had stayed at NTV. We had done some amazing things. I felt a conversation needed to be taken to the Kenyan masses.
And through your journey, now you're doing the African Leadership Dialogues now, where you go around the continent talking to leaders, African leaders. Who are some of the most interesting people that you've interviewed?
There are numerous. I mean, it's incredible.
I mean, one that really sticks out
For
in your
me,
mind?
I find my first interview with Nkosana Moyo, who runs the Mandela Institute of Development Studies in South Africa, was a former minister in Mugabe's government, resigned in protest at Mugabe's policies. I think he's incredibly provocative. And I think that's good. We need to start finding out who are we really. And we like to attribute a lot of blame to others. But what respect do we as Africans have for ourselves, you know? How do you reconcile our urban societies with our rural societies where, you know, thought processes are so different, but we have to respect the fact that at the end of the day, many of us live with cultural practices and values that, you know, we have to develop common understanding. That was a fascinating interview. Alakija, Folorunsho Alakija in Nigeria. She's now the richest black woman in the world, and a lot of people scream blue murder about it. But when you follow her journey, it's an incredible journey. Ashish Thakkar in Uganda. Ashish is amazing. You drop out of high school, you've gone through the whole trauma of walking out of Rwanda in 1994 with nothing, as he says, but the clothes on your back. And you turn all that into success.
I'm just taking notes and making sure my production guys take notes because these are all the people that we want to bring on the show later
There
on.
are incredible African stories out there if you look for them.
Any regrets? You've had an amazing career, an amazing life. You've met some incredible people. If you could do it all again, what would you change?
I don't believe in regrets. I think everything we go through is a learning process. I've worked in a factory 12 hours, Salim, to get through university. You know, my hands were literally bleeding through that experience. You know, we've gone through difficult family experiences in the loss of our son, in the aftermath of healing and moving on from that. But you can't live life with regrets.
If God came down and said, Julie, I'm going to give you one shot to do
I'd
it
just
all
say,
again.
I'd say the only guarantee I want is I want to be with you when I leave. That's my focus. I don't like to look back.
And what part of your life do you love the most? The family part, the travel, the news, the storytelling?
Yeah, oh, it's the family part. There's nothing like being at home with my family around me and the chaos of the kids and the stability of the husband and the warmth. And I wish, I keep thinking of family and Africa and how in many of our urban centers we're losing it. And I keep wishing that somehow people could understand the value, focusing on career, struggling so hard, and I understand all those struggles, but you've got to vest in family.
How do you maintain that balance? You know, you're traveling a lot, you're on air a lot, you're working constantly. How do you maintain that balance with the kids and with the husband?
Yeah, you've got to work smart, right? So I keep my travels as tight as they need to be. And I also, I don't compromise on time with the family. So I'm happy to sometimes tell people I can't be at that function because I'm going to be with my family, and I don't apologize for it. I think a lot of women and even fathers, husbands, feel they need to apologize if they're going to say, I'm going to be with my wife and kids. No, it's not an apology. That is important time, not just for self, but for society as well. So I don't do a lot of social functions, and you won't.
Well,
yeah.
I noticed even when we meet at the World Economic Forum or we're at the Aspen stuff,
Yeah.
you don't sort of once the official side of the day is over. Kind of Julie disappears.
I'm not the party animal.
Julie disappears. We're all looking for you, like, where is she? Where is she gone? But I know you're working on the stuff for next day because you're moderating debates a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, do you enjoy the moderating part of
I
things?
love it. I love moderating debates and discussions at these forums because I'm a thinker and I soak in what people think as well. I love different perspectives. So yes, I do enjoy that. But the best thing is getting back home, opening the door, and then I shout, "Where are my babies?" And I hear from all over, "Mommy's home!" There's nothing in the world like that, you know.
Julie, the show is called The Scoop.
Yeah.
I need you to give me something that very few, if any people, know about.
A scoop.
A scoop.
A scoop. So Salim, you know, I always say people have seasons in life, they have phases. I think I'm heading into a new season soon. I don't know how soon, sometimes soon could be longer than you think, but I've started writing and I want to start directing. Serious series, mini-series, epic mini-series for Africa and movies as well. So you won't just see me on the screen. I'm hoping that my next phase is going to be seriously behind that camera as well.
Fantastic. I wish you all the very
Thank
best,
you.
Julie. And that's The Scoop with Julie Gichuru. Join me again next week when I'll be talking to yet another great African personality. From me and the entire team of The Scoop here in Nairobi, Kenya, thanks for watching. Julie, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for being on
It's been a
the show. It's
pleasure.
been a really, thank you.
Thank
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for, opening up to me.